Good afternoon, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Grandpa coming to you from the living room in Jacksonville Beach. And there the fire's finally starting to go. Hear that fire crackling? Yeah. Getting ready for a big storm here. And it's going to be windy. It'll be cold, but not like up north. It never gets that cold here. So I'm sitting here in the afternoon with a cup of tea. Staying virtually warm. I told your grandmother yesterday because I had this playing while I was sitting here. And she said, well, it's cold down here. I said, well, I'm sitting near the fire. And she said, well, that doesn't get you warm. I said, well, yeah, it's an app. It's a warmth app. Not yet. Someday. Not yet. What was that? Today we're in Matthew chapter 23. We're going to look at the 7 woes and then the judgment on Israel that's going to come. So this is now part of the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus is in Jerusalem. He's turned over the money changers' tables, cleared out the temple. Everybody that hates him a real lot, want to kill him. There's some that love him, and there's a lot that are just confused. They don't know who he is. Quite frankly, most people don't know who he is. You should get to know him. He's somebody good to know. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the experts in the law and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. And that's in the synagogue. There's something called Moses' seat. Synagogue is not something from the Old Testament. It's from the intertestamentary period when they were dispersed around the first the Babylonian and then the Persian Empire. They started creating these synagogues, and the word's Greek. But they put a lot of Old Testament kind of stuff in it because they were worshiping the God of Israel from the Old Testament. Therefore pay attention to what they tell you and do it. But do not do what they do. So he's saying when they're reading the Bible to you from Moses' seat at the front of the synagogue, then do what they tell you. But when you watch what they do, they're not doing the right thing. Don't do what they do. For they do not practice what they teach. They tie up heavy loads, hard to carry, and put them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing even to lift a finger to move them. And what did Jesus say earlier in this book of Matthew? His burden's not heavy at all. Take up your yoke. His burden's not heavy. But these guys, they're not doing this to free you. They're doing it to put you under their jurisdiction so they have power. Because that's what it's all about in this world. Everybody wants power. Jesus already has the power. He doesn't have to want that. He's got it. He made the world in 6 days. How much more power? And we're talking about the universe. We look up in the sky at night, all those stars that go on forever. He made that. He's got the power. These people want the power. They do all their deeds to be seen by people, for they make their phylacteries wide and their tassels long. So their phylacteries are these things that they wore on their foreheads and their forearms with a biblical quote, and it's, I can't remember what it is. It might be from Leviticus, but it's what, in a mezuzah, if you go to a Jewish home, they'll have a mezuzah on the doorpost, and it's tilted slightly. I forget why. Inside of it, there's a little scroll with scripture on it. These guys, because God said, tie them to your forearms and to your forehead. So they took it literally. They're like, oh yeah, we're doing exactly what you're talking about. He's saying no, like have it in your head. Have it where your strength is. Not like make these boxes and tie them on yourself, but that's what they did. And their tassels are long. They're talking about the tassels on the prayer shawl. Remember that time the lady who had a blood issue came up to Jesus and said, if I could only touch the hem of his garment. Well, she was talking about the tassel of his prayer shawl. I don't know if I have one anymore. I used to have one. They loved the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogue and elaborate greetings in the marketplaces, and to have people call them rabbi. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And call no one your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. And it's not saying that you shouldn't call your father, Father. They're talking about people, well, look at the Catholic Church. That's what you'd call a priest. That's something that I think they could look at this and go, oh, we should stop calling them Father. Because you only have one Father. When it comes to religion, when it comes to spiritual matters, you have one Father, and He's in heaven. Nor are you to be called teacher, for you have one teacher, the Christ. So He's saying, I'm your teacher. The greatest among you will be your servant, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. So to be humble is to be meek and to be quiet and not assert yourself and let other people have like the best piece of meat and stuff like that. And he's saying if you're that person, you'll get it. You'll get the biggest piece of meat when you get to heaven. But if you exalt yourself, it's like you put yourself above everybody else. I'm better than everybody. Then God will humble you. So it's what you do and what God does. If you're humble, God will exalt you. If you exalt yourself, God will humble you. But woe to you. So now he's talking about the Pharisees and the experts in the law. Woe to you, experts in the law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! You keep locking people out of the kingdom of heaven. For you neither enter nor permit those trying to enter to go in. So, and he's going back to that where he was saying, like you're giving people heavy burdens. You're saying, in order to be righteous, you have to do all these things. And we're going to keep telling you, nah, it's not enough, it's not enough. You have to keep doing more, you have to keep giving more money. And a lot of times it always comes down to money. Excuse me. And so he's saying, not only are you not getting in, but you're keeping these other people from getting in. And remember what Jesus said? It's better to have somebody to tie a giant stone around your neck and throw you into the Sea of Galilee to drown. Woe to you, experts in the law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! You cross land and sea to make one convert, and when you get one, you make twice as much a child of hell as you yourselves. So, just like the Christian church is a proselyte church, Judaism is a proselyte religion. They're supposed to get people to worship the one true God. But they're acting like they're doing that, and they're getting converts, but they're telling their converts the wrong thing, and they're turning the converts into them. And if you haven't figured it out yet, Jesus is not down with the Pharisees and the experts of the law. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple is bound by nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple is bound by the oath. Blind fools, which is greater, the gold of the temple that makes the gold sacred? Or the gold, which is better? Which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? And whoever swears by the altar is bound by nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift on it, he is bound by the oath. So these are all things where this is all about these guys getting money and power. So it's like, well, no, the gold, the more gold you give me, the better God's going to like you. The more gifts you put on the altar for us that we can have, the better God's going to like you. You are blind, which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And whoever swears by the temple swears by it and the one who dwells in it. And that's God. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and the one who sits on it. So God doesn't really live in the temple, but his presence is there. It's called the Shekinah glory. And it was in the temple for a couple hundred years, and then eventually it left. The Shekinah glory just went like, no, I'm out of here. You people are too wayward. Woe to you, experts in the law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! You give a tenth of mint, dill, and cumin. So they're giving, for all their herbs, they take 1/10 of it, and they give that to the temple. They're tithing. Tithing means giving 1/10. And a lot of people do that today. A lot of Christians and Jews. And I don't know if Muslims do. They take 1/10 of what they make and they send it automatically to their house of worship to support it. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's see what Jesus says about it. They're meticulous in doing that. Yet you neglect what is more important in the law. Let's find out what Jesus thinks is important. Justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have done these things without neglecting the others. So he's saying, this is good, to take 1/10 of everything and give it to the temple. That's good. But there's no justice. There's no mercy. There's no faithfulness. So it's worthless. What you did is worthless. Blind gods, you strain out a gnat, yet swallow a camel. So a gnat is a little tiny fly. the tiniest of flies. Sometimes they call them no-see-ums because you can't see them. They bite you. So you're getting rid of that. I got to get rid of every little thing that's bad in my life. But at the same time, you're swallowing something as big as a camel. So it's like if you have a glass of water and you're going to drink it, and you look in there and say, like, oh, okay, I see some little speck. Oh, it's a gnat that's in there. And you take a strainer and you strain that out of there. You say, oh, this is great. And you drink the water. But you don't see the fact that there's a camel in the glass. And camel's bigger than a human being, way bigger. Jesus is like that. Jesus has a sense of humor. He can be sarcastic. He didn't come to earth to be a stick in the mud. He didn't come to earth to be this religious leader. He's a real guy. He tells real things to people. Woe to you, experts in the law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup, so that the outside may become clean too. So this is something, they had these ritual washings of everything. And sometimes your grandmother gives me a hard time because I rinse out my teacup. And sometimes I'll wash it, but I don't wash it like really, really thoroughly. I don't scrub the inside. And it gets the stain from the tea. Sometimes in the workplace, and I've had some of these cups, you have a coffee cup that after a while, like the inside of it is brown. It's nasty looking. And that's fine. That's not going to kill you. But if you meticulously clean the outside of that cup and go like, oh, look how well I keep this cup, your grandmother's going to look in there and go, yeah, it looks nasty inside there. Look at the inside of that cup. I'm just saying. Woe to you, experts in the law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs that look beautiful on the outside, but inside are full of the bones of the dead and of everything unclean. And when we get back to the Old Testament, we'll be finding out exactly what unclean is, what that means. And dead bodies are unclean. There are certain things you had to do if you touch the dead body. So some of the priests weren't even allowed to touch a dead body, even if it was like their wife or their father or mother. They couldn't touch the dead body because it made them unclean for a certain amount of time. And if you're over there in Israel, you see that they take whitewash, this white kind of paint, and they do the outside of these tombs, and they look beautiful. But that doesn't hide the fact that they're filled with dead men's bones. In the same way, on the outside, you look righteous to people, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. And now this is really going to make these guys mad. Not that he called them hypocrites, because he's been calling them hypocrites. Hypocrisy means, if you're a hypocrite, it's what they say is, do what I say, not what I do. And Jesus started by talking about that. That when they're in Moses' seat, and they're reading the law to you, follow that law. But don't do what they do. And they're saying, do what I say, don't do what I do. And that's exactly the same. But then he says, and lawlessness. That you're not following the law. And these guys are to the point where they think they are the law. Jesus is like, nah, I'm the law, homie. Remember when he said that the Sabbath was made for man, not man made for the Sabbath. And he broke the Sabbath in their eyes. Woe to you, experts in the law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous. And you say, if we had lived in the days of our ancestors, we would not have participated with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Trust me, you would have. By saying this, you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your ancestors. You snakes, you offspring of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Wow, Jesus is laying it on these guys. For this reason I am sending you prophets and wise men and experts in the law, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town, so that on you will come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel. And if you remember, Genesis chapter 4, Cain and Abel. Cain slew his brother Abel. The blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. And Zechariah wrote one of the last Old Testament books. I tell you the truth, this generation will be responsible for all these things. Oh, I bet they're really happy with Jesus now. And then Jesus says, so he's standing there, he's in Jerusalem, and he goes, oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those who are sent to you. How often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But you would have none of it. Look, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me from now until you say, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. And that's from Psalm 118. So we're marching ever onward to Calvary. And we're going to see some very, very interesting things as we get to the end of the book of Matthew. So until next time, peace out, kiddies.